Data-driven organizations are 23 times more likely to gain customers. That's why I developed this LinkedIn learning course specifically tailored for product managers like you who are eager to harness the power of data to craft exceptional software products. In this course, you'll gain the skills necessary to leverage product analytics tools, empowering you to create market-leading products. My mission is simple: equip you with the knowledge and tools to make data-driven decisions that lead to product success. I'm Drew Falkman, a seasoned product strategist, and I believe that understanding data is paramount for effective product management. Let's dive in together and elevate your product management game. Is understanding your users, what they do, and what drives them to do these behaviors. Product analytics gives us the ability to not only capture, but also analyze our users and see how they're interacting with our applications. Many users who are new to product management often ask, why don't we just use Google Analytics? Google Analytics does capture user and behavior data, but the focus is really on marketing and advertising. And while you can certainly eke out some valuable information, ultimately, marketing analytics platforms are designed to convert users and understand users from a purely financial and marketing perspective. Product analytics, on the other hand, focus on the entirety of how users are engaging with your application. They're designed to understand the entire customer journey, as well as what is and isn't working within your application. Product analytics tools are also private, meaning that all the data you capture and analyze is only accessible internally to your organization. Product analytics empower product managers and other users within the organization to do so many things. We can identify which users are really engaging with your applications. We can find problem areas. We can understand what hooks are improving retention or growth. We can use them to support decision-making. We can understand our users from web to mobile and across the entire enterprise's digital presence. And this is really just the tip of the iceberg. By understanding user data and behavior, all sorts of questions can be answered. Keep in mind that while this course is focused on product managers, it's very common for this data to be shared and utilized across the business. Information can be relevant to sales and marketing, customer service, and all kinds of managers to support decision-making and analysis. As with other types of data, what you're observing and how becomes a critical area of how well your products and your company can do. Ultimately, product analytics gives product managers control over their product by helping them to understand who their users are, how they're using the product, as well as set and track goals and grow their applications, reduce churn, and increase retention of their users. Product managers would be flying blind, praying for growth, and building products out of pure guesswork. Analytics are the foundation of making great products because it enables us to back our decisions with data. Product analytics allow us to visualize our product data so that we can find patterns, set goals and track our progress, and learn from our experiments. In the end, there should be virtually no product decisions that are made without support from data and analytics. There are 4 key ways that analytics can help product managers. They can help us to understand our users. They can help us to evaluate the behaviors of those users within our applications. They can help us with funnels and conversions and retaining users. And they can also allow us to track experiments. We can learn more about our users by consolidating data across our platforms and integrating customer data from our applications to better understand who's using our app. Additionally, by using cohorts, we can divide our users into logical partitions in order to compare how different groups of users interact with our site. This can help us to understand what types of users are engaging most, what types of users are leaving, both of which allow us to see where we can improve our product and marketing initiatives. Behaviors are the key way that we measure how users are interacting with our site. Tapping, clicking, scrolling, streaming, all these items are events we can monitor with product analytics and learn details about how users are interacting with the product in high detail, in individual action, like who's opening a new feature, and in aggregate features, like how many users are going through specific flows, and pretty much anything you can imagine. These behaviors can be grouped together into funnels, and then these funnels can be tracked, and the data can be used to find ways to make it easier and incentivize users to make it further down the funnel. A conversion is when a user follows a funnel all the way to the endpoint. Oftentimes, this is a point of monetization, like subscribing to your application or purchasing a product. Growth product managers often focus solely on conversions, and product analytics are invaluable to this process. Retention is all about keeping users and subscribers in your application. Understanding your churn or the rate at which people are leaving your app can help you stop bleeding, and using analytics is key to determining root causes. Finally, analytics tools can help us run experiments to test interest in new features, to try different UXs in comparison. This is called A/B testing, and more. Analytics can enable us to run these tests and compare the results, thus making it easy to decide which version to implement or which features to roll out. Product analytics allow us to see everything that's happening in all of our applications and which of our users are doing what. Being able to control how we see this data can provide amazing insights and make it easier to make product decisions. is product analytics software. These tools allow you to capture data on your users, as well as their behaviors, often across platforms, mobile, web, and more, and give you the tools to visualize this data in a number of ways. While there's a lot of overlap in terms of what product analytics tools can do, there are two major categories: quantitative tools that focus on aggregated data and customized visualizations, and qualitative tools, which look at some aggregated data but also allow you to see the user experiences that individuals are having. A third minor category is the customer data platform that focuses solely on user data about segmentation. You also have a choice of using product suites that provide an array of tools, or using best-of-breed products that have a more detailed focus. Some of these tools, usually the suites, will also have additional features that allow for testing or deploying changes or elements directly to your user interface. Most of the time, when you hear talk of product analytics, it's of the quantitative variety. There are two best-of-breed products that dominate this realm: Amplitude and Mixpanel. Their focus is on enabling your devs to easily capture any behaviors and empowering product managers to have flexible options to view the analytics. They're highly customizable, but you need to do a lot of configuration to get them set up and working the way you want them to. Then there are the plug-and-play suites. These are popular because they automatically capture events happening in your app. You'll still likely need some customization, but these have a good start. And they're usually suites, so they include other things like surveys, onboarding wizards, and more. The leaders in this area tend to be Pendo and Heap. For qualitative product analytics, there are a few options. Some mainly record user sessions for playback, while others allow you to track funnels and group behaviors. Because of the qualitative nature, tools in this area sometimes include surveys or other tools to capture user information. Some examples include Hotjar, SessionStack, AppQues, and FullStory. The last type of product analytics tool is customer data platforms. These are often used in more enterprise environments, but are a great way to link up your user data, not just between the applications you've built, but also CRM, social media, and more. These kinds of tools, when integrated with product analytics, can really make for powerful segmentation and customer experience designs across your entire organization. Twilio, Segment, and Insider are the most well-known in this category. As you can see, there's a pretty broad range of analytics tools you can use, and we're really just scratching the surface. There are hundreds of tools out there for managing enterprise data, product, and otherwise. For the purpose of this course, we're going to focus on the two most popular product analytics packages, one each of quantitative and qualitative, Amplitude and FullStory. We'll dive into these tools very soon. Product Analytic Initiative is having a good strategy. In order to ensure that you are capturing the right data, you zoom out so that you can set priorities, assess risks, set goals, and otherwise prepare so that you can get your analytics set up correctly. So we're capturing the right information and providing the necessary views to support your strategies. Setting an analytics strategy is really a matter of asking questions, the right ones, and with the right stakeholders. Through these questions, you should be able to identify gaps, opportunities, and pitfalls, which will provide the scaffolding for what data you'll need to capture and visualize. The first question is, at what stage is your product? Is it slated to be created? Is it built already but needs to grow? Has it been around a while and now needs to be competitive? We'll discuss each of these in future videos. What is your product vision? What are the ideals that are set out for this product, both in terms of what it does and for whom, but also where does it stand within the business? Is this a flagship product, an internal one, a sideshow? The product vision changes and morphs over time, so this is a good time to reanalyze. What are your business goals for the year? Are you a fast-growing company, slow growth, maintaining market lead? Are you restructuring or making acquisitions? Are there any business goals within your particular group? Maybe you're looking to integrate AI, or maybe your CTO wants to get rid of technical debt. Know any and all of these. What then are your product goals? These will oftentimes be in service of the business goals, but not always. If you've had a goal you were working on, will it be the same moving forward? Do you need new product goals for any reason? Do you have any of your own initiatives you might want to kick off that will affect how you approach your product analytics, like assessing the effectiveness of your mobile app or hitting some specific revenue numbers or KPIs? If you don't know what these terms mean, don't worry, we'll discuss them in another video shortly. What issues are you having with your product? Any user issues? Is your churn rate acceptable? Do you have bugs, bad app store reviews? Are there areas where customer support is getting hit heavily? Be honest and use data from sales, marketing, and customer service to make sure you really understand this, even if you think you already do. What risks do you have? Any new competitors? Any risky assumptions you have about your new product or feature? Do you know or can you think of any data that might be missing to make good decisions? Do you understand how users are using your app? Where are they dropping? Where do they spend most of their time? What is their satisfaction for certain features? For now, don't worry about being able to get that data. Just think about what would be nice to have. Are there any business cases or decisions that you'll need to support with data in the near future? And lastly, What is your bandwidth? Do you have some developer bandwidth to add events and integrate the data you need? Do you have bandwidth on the product ops side to create visualizations and track this data? Keep in mind, coming up with your product analytics strategy requires proper diligence, talking to people across the organization, and taking the time to get the real answers to all of your questions. When you're done, though, you should have a pretty good idea of what you're going to need, and then it's a matter of making a plan and putting it into action. It's all about finding product market fit. That's the moment when your product meets the market, such as you are solving a problem customers are willing to pay to have solved. This phase is tricky because you don't necessarily know your users very well. You don't have many of them to draw conclusions, and you usually don't have a big enough team to take a lot of time to collect and analyze the data. The key to a good strategy is to use what data you can get. The lean startup methodology, based on a book by Eric Ries, has a very simple flyway to go on in this phase. Build, measure, learn. You make something, measure how it works, then figure out if it works or doesn't, and either go deeper if it does or pivot if it doesn't. It's very simple, but you'd be surprised how many teams spend too much time building, don't measure it well, and aren't able to learn and progress. Part of this methodology is about getting something out fast so you can get data from it. This is often what we call the minimum viable product, or MVP. The idea is to distill down what the core features of the app are that will help you discover if there's a market for your product before you spend tons of development time and money. To know what to build and to support what you're doing in this early phase, it's important to rely on user research, mostly one-on-one interviews with potential users to learn about what their problems are in the space, what they're currently using, and as you get your application out there, whether it's working. There's an art and science to this, and I recommend learning more through the courses here in the LinkedIn Learning Library. Once you have your MVP live, you can use analytics to further understand their users and what isn't working in your application. Where's their heavy usage? Where do people leave? Segmenting users can be key here. If you use ad sourcing and have ads set up for different industries or segments, you can use that and see which areas are bringing you heavier users. You can do other types of segmenting to find out more about who likes and doesn't like your app, and then use that information to get more beta users and ad buys in that market. Use these to create personas to enlighten your user experience. You can also map user journeys. These can be full user journeys, including offline activities, as discovered through user interviews, or online as discovered through segmenting and analytics. What actions show repeat usage of your product? For example, for early Pinterest users, if they could get them to pin something, they would typically return. What's that action for your application? As you see your successes and failures, you'll need to decide, based on this data, should I pivot, try something totally different, or should I persevere and go deeper on something that's working? What that threshold is will depend on your users, your application, and your market. Dan Olson, in his Lean Product Playbook, discusses how product market fit is really just about having the value proposition of your product meet the underserved need of your target market. So how do you know when you've reached some form of product market fit? This is a tough question to answer, but really, it's when your users start using your app more. One good test comes from Sean Ellis. He's a product growth expert. And he says by getting 40% or higher when you survey your users as to how disappointed they would be if they couldn't use your app anymore. If you're looking to start driving revenue, you can devise experiments that can help you find pathways to revenue. These experiments can test trials and trial periods, as well as whether to have freemium or entirely paid subscription-based application. Finding product market fit is your first biggest product management challenge when creating a product, and using qualitative and quantitative data will be instrumental in finding the right market and building the right features and value proposition to get them hooked. Coming up with a product growth strategy is a collaboration between marketing, sales, and product management. It requires holistic thinking and, of course, a data-driven approach. When you're growing your product, there are two areas you can develop: the market and your product. For each, you will have to ask if you need to go deeper into the existing product or the market, or if you want to explore new markets and new features entirely. A good product growth strategy encompasses your approach to both areas. Then you need to ask yourself, are you looking for more users, more usage, or more revenue? Depending on your answer, this will determine what metrics to measure and your approach. We'll go deeper into the importance of metrics and how to choose your approach and metrics in a later video. Suffice to say, this is the time to adopt them. If your goal is more users, you need to discover first if you really know your audience. Analyzing segments, especially with a CDP like segment, can be invaluable in understanding who's driving the growth and will help you understand how you might increase users in your hot segments or go to adjacent markets, either industry or down or up market. Also, are there any nascent markets you might be able to penetrate? This can be discovered through segmentation as well as experimentation through ads, landing pages, and more. If you're going after new revenue, there are a few ways to investigate when choosing your strategy. One question is whether you want to be product-led. A product-led strategy makes your product the key sales and marketing tool, usually through a freemium model that encourages users to sign up on their own, see the value, and then pay to subscribe to valuable features. Are you comfortable that your pricing strategy is optimal? You can come up with a data-driven strategy to determine this through experimentation. For example, if you can test different pricing levels via separate landing pages to determine which pricing structure converts the most users. For example, you can test different pricing levels via separate landing pages to determine which pricing structure converts the most users to subscriptions. You can also test different pricing levels for features or pay for a feature. And don't forget to experiment with your pricing page to find the best way to communicate your levels and encourage users to jump in at the level that's most optimally priced. Behavior economic tools can really help with this. This is where you need to start thinking about conversion funnels. We'll go deeper into this in an upcoming video. These are basically the pathways to subscribing. You can monitor progress using analytics and experiment to optimize conversions. If you are going after usage, your product goals will be key. What are the drivers of deeper product usage? Note these, then use experimentation and incentives to get users to do these actions. No matter what your goals are, integrating a viral hook is absolutely key to getting more users, engagement, and revenue. Look for that action that allows users to share something from your application on social media or otherwise invite other users to try it. What are the incentives that can get your users to do these actions? Whatever your application, decent product growth will be a key aspect of being a solid data-driven product manager. Using data and experimentation can ensure consistent growth in the areas you need. Once you've achieved a certain level of growth, it's something you need to consider from your first customer onboarding. Attrition is a natural part of the customer lifecycle, but as a product manager, your job will be to minimize it and keep customers using your software products as long as you can. Churn is what they call when you lose someone in your application. There are two types of churn. Customer churn, where someone cancels or downgrades a subscription or other loss of revenue, though they still continue to be a user. And there's user churn, where your users actually stop using your application for good. There are a few ways that product managers measure retention. All are done over a time period. End day retention, unbounded retention, and bracket retention. Let's have a look at these. End day retention measures how long people stay after they sign up. So you may measure 5-day retention or 30-day retention, for example. In product analytics, we would say there is a 83% return on for day 30. This is a good way to measure retention for applications where a user would be expected to log in every day, like social media or a work application. Unbounded measures the total users that come back on a given day or anytime after. This is called return on or after, and used for applications where users don't need to log in every day and have a less consistent usage pattern. So for example, we might want to measure users who returned on or after day 7 since they signed up. Think about Instacart, for example. This might indicate someone came back to order groceries the following week and is a good indicator that they might adopt the application as a regular way to shop. Bracketed retention is a more customized way of doing end day retention in an application that a typical user would return at a specific interval that's not daily. For example, a payroll application would have users logging in every 2 weeks to process payroll. You would then create 2-week brackets and check users who return on day 14, day 28, and so on. Once you're measuring this data, when you see changes, your job will be to look for why. Keep in mind that only 1 in 26 people speak up when they have a problem with your company. Discovering your critical action will be helpful. This is often an action that, when users perform it, they're more likely to stay. For example, in an HR app, this might be importing all of the employees or connecting their bank account for payroll. You might find this through cohort analysis or by creating segments of users that left versus those who stay. Other places you can look are App Store reviews, social media, and customer support data that happens around the time your retention rate drops. Implementing exit surveys might also be a source for problem solving. Your final step in retention strategy will be to run experiments to determine what works to incentivize users to do your critical actions or log in and interact with the app. Retention is a key aspect of product management and one that should be implemented on day 2. Having the right strategy from the get-go ensures you will be gathering the data you need to keep your users as long as possible. Is at the heart of the product manager's job. The next feature could bring in a new cohort of users or retain and increase the lifetime value of existing customers. Using data to drive this decision-making process is key. When determining your strategy, there are a few things to keep in mind. What is driving the business case? Are there any issues within the app, low retention, low subscription, low conversions that you might need to work on? Are there marketplace issues? Of the potential upcoming features, do any need a little or a lot of dev time? There are a number of formal frameworks you can use to help you with prioritization. If you prefer that approach, some of them are Moscow, which is listing things out in terms of must-haves, should-haves, could have, and definitely won't have. Jobs to be done, Kano, Rice, Product Tree, there are tons of them, and these are really just the tip of the iceberg. One of the methods is just using a simple 2x2 prioritization matrix. This is a data-driven but also human approach where you weigh value of a feature against effort and determine essentially which features are going to have the highest effort for the least amount of work. However you slice it, you're going to need data. A lot of the most important information here will be qualitative. This is information from user interviews, product walkthroughs, user suggestions, anything that's from specific users, but not necessarily in a large enough sample to be quantifiable or statistically significant. We can also use quantitative data. This is where your analytics can come in. This way you can look at usage patterns, you can do experimentation and use that data and do things like feature flags or fake door testing, which we'll talk about later. A few key areas in our analytics that can help us are cohorts and segmentation. Cohorts can tell us if there are certain user types whose needs are unmet, like maybe mobile users, for example, or if they're otherwise in need of something. Maybe there's a segment that's missing from your target market that could be better targeted with the feature. Finding out what's missing using behaviors and events in your application is more art and storytelling than science, but at least you might be able to discover some problem areas. Experimentation is an invaluable way to test the waters for new features. There are a couple key ways to do this. One is creating fake door tests. These are basically putting a link to a potential new feature, and then when the user taps or clicks on it, it says coming soon or maybe offers them something to be notified when it does get released. To be honest, customers don't always love this, but it can give you really good data, and it can also help you to build a database of willing early adopters. A/B testing allows you to build a couple of simple MVP versions or simplified versions of your feature, and then use some tests essentially to determine which users prefer. If you're willing to put a little more effort into testing the waters, you can build an MVP version and then roll it out to just a segment of your users. Using feature flags gives us the ability to essentially allow PMs to turn on and off features and assign them to a percentage of your user or even to different segments of these users. These segments could even be something like the top 10% of most frequent users within a specific industry to determine if a feature will do well within an industry or cohort. All in all, data and analysis is absolutely invaluable in determining what features to build next and in what order to roll them out. In the next video, we'll discuss how to set KPIs and find the metrics that matter for your application. To understand, and in some cases define, some key data points to track how well applications are achieving their goals of acquisition, activation, retention, and ultimately revenue. Agreeing on the metrics that matter to your organization ensures that everyone is working to accomplish the same thing. One of the main analytics concepts you may read or hear about is KPIs. KPI stands for Key Performance Indicator and represents important data points. Most product managers will choose KPIs that they're monitoring and even set goals to achieve specific numbers for them. Another key concept to understand is that of leading and lagging indicators. Lagging indicators are data points that can't be instantly affected, but they're often very important to a company's bottom line. Things like revenue and retention are lagging indicators. Leading indicators are data points that can be more directly affected, like conversion rates and behaviors. Ideally, we look to find the leading indicators that can lead to boosts in our key lagging indicators. While KPIs can be both, leading indicators are often more actionable KPIs. A number of KPIs are used across the industry and aren't specific to any application. These come in four main areas. In financial, these data points are all lagging indicators. We have cost of acquiring a customer, or CAC. CLV stands for customer lifetime value and is how much a specific customer spent in the entire time he was a customer. LTV is the average CLV across all customers. Oftentimes, it's valuable to assess the CAC to LTV ratio to determine what it costs to get a customer and how much revenue they will generate for that spend. MRR and ARR stand for monthly and annual recurring revenue and give us a big picture, understanding revenue growth over time. You can also measure how much revenue a single user might bring you. This is the average revenue per user, or ARPU. The most important growth metrics are daily active users and monthly active users, or DAU and MAU. The most important to you will depend on the frequency your users need to use your application. Measuring traffic, or how many users are coming to your site, is also a key indicator, as is the bounce rate, or how many users come to a screen, then leave from that same screen without going anywhere else. When it comes to retention and subscriptions, we can manage the session duration, or how long a user stays for each visit, as well as the actions per session, how much they do when they're there for that visit. The retention rate and churn rate tell us how many people stay versus how many people leave or unsubscribe. We talk more about these in the video on retention in this unit. Sessions per user tells us how many visits the user is making. If you are product-led or have a freemium model, you might focus on activation rates, or how many free users are becoming subscribers over a specific time period. The last area for KPIs is a little more murky, and this is measuring satisfaction. The problem with this data is that it requires reporting of the user. A few methodologies exist for measuring this, and they include the customer satisfaction, or CSAT. This is done through surveys, often done in-app, and they let the user state their satisfaction on the 1 to 5 or sometimes a smiley face scale, from not satisfied to neutral to very satisfied. Net Promoter Score, or NPS, is when you ask your users if they would recommend this product to a friend. Then you average that score. 10 usually means, yes, I would tell everyone I know about this, where 1 would be nobody. Customer Effort Score reports on how much perceived effort the user spent to accomplish their task. This is measured with surveys of 1 to 10, rating how easy it was to do some specific task within your application. All in all, there are a number of predefined metrics that can absolutely measure how well your app is received, is growing, is making money, and basically is working. It will be up to you to decide the important ones to track. The idea of a North Star analytic is having a single heuristic by which the entire company can work towards. The idea was created by Sean Ellis. And the idea is simply that by choosing a single data point that everyone can work on, it can provide alignment across departments in an organization, transparency into how things are progressing towards the goal, and ultimately a holistic focus on your customers and your users. Choosing the right North Star is an art and a science. In order to be a valid and effective North Star, the metric should have a few specific properties. It should express some sort of a value. It should represent your vision and strategy, both for the product and especially for the organization. It should be a somewhat leading indicator, and we'll talk about this in a second. It should be actionable, something that if people do things, they can actually really have an effect on them. It should be clear so that everyone understands it, and measurable, and it should be a critical and important data point, not a vanity metric. A good North Star should have a mid-range goal. So it's not a super leading indicator like an event or funnel or something like that. And it shouldn't be a long-term metric that's going to take a while to really understand and assess and to see what it is, like annual recurring revenue. Ideally, something that you can monitor and move at least monthly, and something you can make goals on quarterly. Keep in mind, this analytic is often going to change based on shifting business and product needs. Looking at how other companies have interpreted and used North Star Analytics can help us to understand what it is and what might be the right one for your company. In Facebook, their North Star Analytic was daily active users. That's what represented to them the most important and critical data point that they could all work towards. For Uber, it was rides per week. And for Spotify, it's the time spent listening. You can see for each of these, the metric is simple, it's trackable, and it represents something that's of core importance to the company, to their revenue, and to usage of their applications. Deciding on a North Star is a collaborative exercise, and this should be done including other departments, including sales and marketing. The exercises should include the following. The first thing is you want to make sure that everyone's aligned on what your company's strategy is. Then you can all discuss important, what we call input metrics. And these are just metrics that you're tracking and that are necessary and that could govern what might be eventually a North Star. Then we brainstorm on which metric might be able to represent all of these inputs. Or in some cases, you're going to learn that maybe some of these inputs aren't as important and you can deprioritize them. Then make sure the metric you like fits all of the criteria we discussed earlier. The beauty of a North Star is that it's ever evolving. It's going to change as your company moves forward through time. If this is your first time creating a North Star, you have to be flexible. Try it for a month and then get all the co-collaborators back together and analyze and decide, was this metric the right one to choose? And discuss what you've learned so far in the process of coming up with it. North Star metrics aren't the right solution for every company, but it can be a good way for analyzing growth and getting alignment across an organization. While there are many options for product analytic tools, for the purposes of this course, I've chosen 2 of the most well-used platforms, Amplitude and FullStory. Both can provide you with valuable tools for gathering and understanding data from your product. Let's have a look at each. Amplitude is a powerful and highly customizable analytics tool that allows you to create charts and reports to visualize users and their actions as they move through your product. Amplitude is simple yet deep. It offers the ability to segment users by trait and behavior, as well as integrate user information from other applications within your organization. Amplitude allows you to analyze events or behaviors and track what users are doing in your application, from starting a session to clicking on buttons to interacting with screens, and even allows you the ability to create your own custom events that are specific to your application. These events can be grouped into funnels, allowing you to track how users progress through key flows within it and determine how many users are completing important steps or converting. You can use Amplitude to run experiments, allowing product managers to test what happens when one or more elements within the application change and test it on a subgroup of users, and then compare it with the baseline to determine if this is a change they should make for all users. Amplitude can do so much more. It can create report dashboards that feature critical charts you can share with your team and other teams in your organization. It utilizes AI to create predictive analytics, and it can integrate with other data and applications. FullStory offers some of the features that Amplitude has, but one key element that can be invaluable: the session replay. Like Amplitude, FullStory tracks and segments users. It tracks events and funnels and allows you to see conversions. However, with FullStory, when you run reports, you can drill into each individual session, allowing you to watch a video of how each user interacted with your application and giving you key qualitative data that can help you figure out why aspects of your application are or aren't working. Additionally, FullStory requires very little configuration. It auto-captures events and data by adding a simple script, and you can easily tag events within your application without making changes to the code. This makes it easy to set up and configure. FullStory can also integrate your data and other applications. It also has other interesting tools like tracking rage click, when a user gets frustrated and clicks or taps repeatedly on some area thinking that something should happen, or by viewing heat maps, which show where users are focusing their attention when they come to a specific part of your application or website. Because of all this, FullStory is more of an experience platform, focusing on not just the analytics, but capturing and measuring the experience of your users across applications within your enterprise. The combination of Amplitude and FullStory provides us with the ability to understand and interpret the data we get from our application so that we can make intelligent decisions about our product. Let's jump in and look at how we can use these tools to be better product managers. No matter how you're going to capture your product analytics, the first thing you need to do is set up your application or applications to begin collecting the data that can be analyzed. This, of course, requires some planning. As we discussed in the first section, you need to be aware of what your product goals are and how that will affect the data you want to capture. When it comes to setup and configuration, you'll need to make sure to note the following. Is there any existing data you need to import? What, if any, data will be captured by your analytics out of the box, and how good will that data be? What custom events and/or data will you need to integrate? What effort does this take, and how much developer resources do you have to do this? What third-party information do we need and want, and how do our analytics products integrate them? This spreadsheet from Amplitude can help you to answer these questions. You can see it has a little introduction here and a glossary of terms in case anyone's not clear. And then you can go through and you can determine what events you want to capture and where they might be found. And it puts some sample ones in here to give you an idea of what they might be, what user properties you want to capture, and again, where you will get them from, if this is from third parties or if this is something that's going to come from analytics or within your application. And then some information about your organization, like what properties from your org do you want to capture, right? Things about subscriptions, etc. And there's a bunch of other things, and you can have discussion. If you're working with Amplitude sales, they may even have support do this during the onboarding process. Now, if you're doing this on your own, you're going to be on your own. But there's some really good help documentation to help get you started. So when you're doing this, you need to think about the data that you're collecting and any information that might be personally identifiable. That's an important thing to consider. This personally identifiable information we call PII. And in many cases, you may not even want or need this data, in which case I recommend don't storing it. But if you do, just be aware that there are some things you're going to need to do to make sure that it's legal. You might have to ask permission. You might have to link to privacy policies and things like that. Now, no matter what software you're using, you're going to have to integrate the SDK. So you can see here, this is the SDK catalog for Amplitude. There are a number of different ones depending on the environment you have. Now, when you first log into Amplitude, it's going to walk you through this, and it's going to essentially determine where you're going to get this data from. So I want to send data from the SDK. You're going to choose your industry. Then you can choose some key information or not if you want to. These are just popular events. You may not have these. And then you'll essentially determine how you want to do all this. And it links to getting the SDK set up. And then you'll link it up. And once it's all hooked up, you're good to go. FullStory has a similar process. When you first log in, you'll get the terms, and then you display some information. Again, what industry are you in and what websites you might be at. You can add additional ones if you want to. And then it's going to ask you some other information in terms of what you need. Privacy. So when it comes to privacy, FullStory, because remember, it's capturing session replay, so it's sort of storing this video. If you want to turn this off, that's a good idea because it will essentially block either certain fields or just block all the forms in general, and you can't see what's filled out. Now, the upside of seeing this is you can see what people entered. So you can see if there's issue with data entry, data validation, things like that. The downside, of course, is depending on who's using your FullStory, they're going to be able to see all this information. And so if you have really private information like social security numbers, things like that, you may not want to expose that to just anyone. And again, they're going to get you to the snippet, which is what they use. And then they also have this browser SDK, right? So they both work on the same basic process. So you plug in the SDK, and once that's plugged in, then it will start beginning recording data, right? So you're going to want to capture and label any key events related to funnels, KPIs. You just want to make sure all the data is in there. And we're going to get deeper into the software and what these events are and things, so you get to see how this all works. So it's basically the same process, whether you're using mobile or web app. It all kind of works under the same general way where you sort of put the code in, and then you can also write, specific things that will allow you to save certain events and whatnot. Note that you can also send this to a teammate, and they have a way that developers can log in and get this data so they know what to set up. So setting up what events and data to capture is obviously a good foundation and where you need to start for product management and data analytics. So take the time to define the data you need. That spreadsheet's a great start. What you need to drive your KPIs and understand product usage. And then once you've got this set up, now you can start looking at your data. And remember, it's not the end. If you miss things or if you realize you're capturing things you don't want, you can always just change this as you go along. This is an iterative process. Nothing is forever. And you can do things like segmenting and breaking your users into cohorts, which is exactly what we're going to discuss. Understanding who your users are is one of the most powerful ways to utilize your product analytics. This can be helpful in making your application more accessible to your users, understanding what types of users you are attracting, what types of users you're converting, and what types of users are leaving. Creating user personas is a tactic used traditionally by marketing and UX to create sample users that identify the main types of users that'll use your application. In product, this helps everyone to envision these users in your application and reminds us all to be thinking from the user perspective. In the beginning, we use our qualitative research to identify the similarities of users as well as the criteria by which we can identify them and understand how they might use our application and what they might need from it. As we gather more quantitative data from analytics, these often relate one-to-one with actual cohorts and segments of users, which we'll discuss more about shortly. There's a great collaborative exercise I've done using products like Miro, where you can go in and you can define sample personas, and they should always be data-driven if you can possibly do it. We can also map out our user journeys. These are the steps our users might take before, during, and after using our application. These can help us to understand the process they're going through to ensure that our application fits into it. For example, if our users are outside for a portion of the journey, that may indicate we should have a mobile app. Keep in mind the user journey may vary from persona to persona. One important distinction that should be noted is a user versus a customer. A customer is quite simply someone who's willing to pay for your product. This might be someone who's subscribing to your SaaS, or someone who's purchasing items for sale if you're an e-commerce site, or someone who clicks on ads if you're ad-driven content. Whatever the case, making this differentiation is key to acquiring and retaining more customers. The customer journey is a process by which a user becomes a customer and advances as a customer. This will vary from application to application, but in SaaS, subscribing and onboarding is a huge part of this, and this journey is what you'll draw on in your analytics to acquire new customers and retain existing ones. We'll talk more about funnels shortly. Your product analytics will play an increasing role in your understanding of users and their journey as your product becomes more mature. Your analytics can capture a lot of key information, including key system information about the device, browser, and operating system. Key behaviors. Let me show you how to create a chart in Amplitude to view your users by some type of data. So we go to the Create menu, we create a chart, and you can go to Segmentation. And note, we're just using this B2B chat. This is in their demo. So if you're using the demo data, you can do this as well. And then you can essentially filter this by however you want to. So we can say segment by, and then we can add filters. Right? So I can filter by location, where they're from, the type of device. So maybe I want to get mobile, the language they speak, what operating system they're using, etc. So there's all kinds of ways. And once you do this, so I can say, I want everyone who's using any form of iOS. So these are going to be either iPhone or iPad users. We'll just go back to 6. That's good enough. And then once you've done that, then you can go through and you can find different types of data that you want to do. You can see this is filtered by this data, and you can also compare it to different segments, etc. Additionally, you can integrate third-party software into your analytics so you can connect these users into other aspects of your organization like support, other apps, CRM systems, and more, so you can get a better understanding of the experience of users and the context of your application. These are the key third-party integrations that work with Amplitude. The real power of product analytics is in truly understanding the experience of users in your application. Knowing who's using your application is paramount. In the next unit, we'll talk about grouping similar users to create user cohorts or segments through which we can see what differentiates users from customers and more. Creating user segments or cohorts is a critical step in understanding our product analytics. A segment is quite simply a group of users that share something in common. This might be a behavior, like they use a certain feature, or it could be some kind of shared data like location or browser type. It could even be a combination of things. If you think about it, analyzing product usage with all of your users at once is a very broad look at the data. Every user is unique, so it makes sense to view your data through users that share important characteristics in common. There are many reasons why we might want to create segments. These can be purely functional or they can be strategic. Some examples are to find all the users who got an error on the site so we can figure out why. To isolate all the users who are subscribing or not and see what behaviors and properties they have in common. To have a better understanding of our personas. Or to analyze the experience of mobile or web users only. Let's take a look at how we create a cohort. So when you go to create a new cohort, you can either define your own in the UI or upload a CSV of different IDs like Amplitude IDs or user IDs if you've got it linked to your application. Or you can use a template to start. And this can be based on events, user attributes from an existing cohort and tweak it, or engagement behavior. Let's just define our own so we can get the full picture of all the stuff that's happening. All right, so you can see here's the definition, right? So you can choose which product, where you're getting the data from. We can just keep it at the B2B analytics for now. That's fine. And then you choose the prompts, right? So why don't we go ahead and look for users, right? But notice you can change these things. Who? So when we go to create a new cohort, it gives us the opportunity to specify these different characteristics of a user. So for our example, we're going to try and select users that are using mobile that are from the US. So let's go ahead and see had a property, right? And then we'll see, did user have property? And then we'll choose device family. And then we choose the value. We have iPhone, iPad. You can select all of these. So you can do them individually. We can select all these phones. In this case, let's go back and choose device type instead. And that's also granular. Let's choose platform. All right. So this will allow us to choose iOS and Android. Those are our web objects, and we can say apply. All right. And then we can add another one. And then again, property. And then this property is going to be country. And we'll choose United States. All right. Now we can apply. So we have this, and now we go ahead and save this, and we can just call this US mobile users. So now that I have this cohort, it's now saved, and I can create my own graphs based on it, right? And you save it into a specific space. So you want to make sure to save it to the space that you're going to use. In this case, this is my own personal space. But if you put it in a shared space, then other people could access it as well. Let's take a look at how we can create a cohort in FullStory. So in FullStory, they call them segments. And you can see there's some predefined ones like everyone, mobile, etc. You, of course, can always use those. But if you want to create your own, you go to the Create menu and choose Segment. And here I like to use the quick filter because it gives you all the options that you have in a pretty easy to select area. So I'm going to go ahead and choose device type. And then I'm going to set that to mobile. And then I'm going to add another. And I'm going to say country. You see it adds it down here is United States. Boom. All right. Now here's what's cool is it will actually show me all the users in that segment. So I can go through and then I can watch these sessions if I want to, and I can see some key data about this particular segment. And now I've also got this segment that I can use whenever I want. So I can go to Save As and I can say, we're going to call this mobile users in United States. And then I can choose where I save it and save it, just like in Amplitude. So there's a lot of similarities between the two. But you can see segmenting your users into cohorts can help you better understand how different types of users are using your application. And it's an important step in analyzing your data. When you understand your users, you can start looking into making sure they get through the key workflows or funnels in your application. And we're going to look at this next. Behaviors and events are the heart of analytics. These are the actions that are happening at your site. Starting a new session, visiting a page, clicking a button. These are universal. But you can also create your own events, subscribe, purchase, post media, and more. Let's take a look at Amplitude and explore some of the behaviors and metrics and how we track them here. So if I go to create a new chart, there are some options that I can choose. If you're going to look at simple events, usually we'll choose segmentation because you're usually going to look at events and behaviors filtered by a certain user type, which may be all users. So we'll start here. So when you look at this, you can see the options we have for behaviors. So if I add an event or metric, you can see I have all these different ones. Notice that these are my frequently used ones. I have these built-in ones that I can use from inside of Amplitude and whatever custom events I may have added myself. Of course, these are going to differ from app to app. So let's create a chart that shows our top global events. All right, so this is going to choose essentially the main things that are happening for all users around the globe. So let's choose top global events. And now you can see I have a chart that has all the events, and I can see what the events even are, and they're ranked. And if I mouse over one of them, it'll show me which one it is. So you can see we have send message, search contacts, edit profile, welcome, react with emoji, etc. So we've got lots of good stuff here. So this is a basic one, and this shows us our top events. So now we can look at these, what value do these have? And then we can think about filtering and comparing also different segments and see how well they do with different groups. If I choose a different application, so let's say I'm in the analytics for chat. Let's go into the media streaming, and you can see it's the same chart, right? But now it's showing different events. So here I have select song or video, search song or video. So these are custom events that have to do with this specific application. Now, if we go in here and we remove top events, we can also add other events if we'd like to, and then we can get data for that event over a specific time. So playing a song or video, and then I can look at it for 7 days, 30 days, 60 days, right? And you can see there's definitely like times when it happens and not. And just a note, when you're playing around with these demos, keep in mind that this data is done, I think, by some sort of bot activity. So it has a sort of very predictive pattern to it. Your real data will probably not be this predictive at all, if you see. But this is basically how you're going to track your KPIs, right? So you can do uniques, and you can also do based on, different measurements, right? So event totals, right? So these are the total events for the day, active percentage. So the percentage of active users who triggered the events, right? So there's lots of ways to look at this data, to look at the simple data of this one event. We can look at it in a bajillion different ways. It's really great. In FullStory, we can click on our metrics down here. So notice I've got in the homepage in this library, it shows us all this different information, and we can see these are the key sort of metrics we have and which ones we want to observe. And you can, if you star them, then they get saved as your favorites. So if I want to look at, for example, mobile sessions, well, let's look at users today. See what we've got. We've got 2 users today. And then you can even, I love this about FullStory. I can never get enough of this. So it's someone in Poland, and then you can go through and watch, what they've done and what happens. That's pretty cool. So that's the basics. We're basically just doing a filter on these different metrics. And of course, you can add your own metrics as well. And it's a wonderful thing. So you can see how by using these simple events or behaviors in our app, we can start to really get a picture of what's happening and how users are using our application. We can track our KPIs, and obviously viewing these metrics is invaluable for understanding app usage and measuring our progress when we're setting goals. So now we're going to look at how we can use these behaviors together to create funnels. And this allows us to see how effective different aspects of our application are. The concept of a funnel in product analytics is essentially a set of events or behaviors that are done in a certain order, usually, to complete a task. This might be signing up for your product, making an e-commerce purchase, or completing some common action in your application. Whatever it is, we can learn a lot by creating these funnels in our analytics to see if they're being completed and by whom, or where users are dropping out of the process, or testing ways to increase completions. Let's start by creating a funnel in FullStory. I like FullStory for funnels because it can show you each step of the funnel and allow you to see who's completing it, and also gives you the ability to watch session replays of users each step of the way. It's a great combination of qualitative and quantitative methodologies. So if you look at spaces, you can see there's a funnel section. So we're actually going to use that. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new funnel. And then, we can call this whatever we want. Let's say we'll just call this user signups. And then we can add the activities, right? So now we can go ahead and say, okay, so the user does visited page, the home page. Okay, then they changed something in, now this is kind of cool. You can use these CSS selectors if we want to. So you can basically type in a very specific formula, and it kind of tells us each. So we want to have someone who essentially typed something in the name field, and then we'll add one. They type something into the email, and then we'll do one where they click on the submit button. All right. Now you can see up. And usually you can see as you've created this, your funnel and who's doing this all, right? So we have, these are all the people that essentially visit it. And then you can see no one progressed here. And I think that's because I actually changed it. So let's try this again. All right, so I think this is the right one. We'll choose company name, and then we'll do anyone who changed email, and then clicked on the, I think that's the submit button. All right, so let's see. All right, and then you can see here's my users. And you can filter by who completed which step, right? And then when you're done, you just save it, right? And you determine where you want to save it and whatever else you want to do. Let's go ahead and look in this other one that I already created. So here's one, and you can see in here I've got this data, and then for each user, you can see what the drop-off is and the completion rate, right? So 60% of users went to the next step, which is filling out the email, and another 42% of users actually went to complete that, which is really good. Like usually you're not going to get that. And then you can say like, oh, I'm going to see the people who completed step 3. And you can go in then and you can watch the session, and you can see, okay, this is a user who came in, they filled out the data, put their name in, right? And you can see I don't have this data blocked out. We should block that out. All right. So that's the basics of creating funnels inside of FullStory. Let's look at how we do it inside of Amplitude. It's pretty similar. Again, we go to the create button, and you'll see there is a chart, but under the chart, there's a funnel, right? So in Amplitude, it looks at everything as charts, because really we're just creating a display on the data. So you can then add events. So let's go ahead and add, they search a song or video, and then they play a song or video, and then they purchase a song or video, right? So let's see. So you can see here's our funnel. And again, this is really good conversion, right? So we have, 99.3% who search a video, play a song or video. That's pretty good. People are looking for songs and playing them. But then, 64% of them, of the original people who searched, actually continue on to purchase a song, which is probably a bit higher than you'll see. But you can see in each of these, you can click on and you can get more information about each step. What's cool about this, as you'll see, is you have a lot of ability to change the date range. You can add comparisons. You can forecast, and we'll talk about that later. And then there's actually other ways that you can look at sort of the journey map and Pathfinder, which is really powerful stuff. Overall, funnels are a really powerful analytical tool that can help product managers track how they're progressing through key flows in their application. And you can be able to see where users are dropping, and I can filter by segments so I can see which segments are performing better or worse. So understanding funnels then leads us to conversions, which is what we'll talk about. Simply put, a conversion happens when a user completes a funnel. In product analytics, we often talk about our conversion rate, which is the percentage of users who initiate the funnel and complete it. I should note that at each step of a funnel, there is a rate of conversion from the previous step to the next. And this is key information, but from a practical standpoint, when we work on our funnels, we're targeting the completion. Conversions typically illustrate key business drivers. User signups, user subscriptions, and shopping cart checkouts are all funnels where the conversion is critical, obtaining a new user or generating revenue. If you look at this funnel I created for Demo Travel app in Amplitude, you can see we have the key steps, basically starting at searching flights, and the final conversion is purchasing a flight. The conversion rate here is about 60.7%. That means about 3/5 of users who search for flights will purchase one. While conversion rates can vary greatly depending on their nature, this is insanely high. Most e-commerce apps can expect something more in the range of 2 to 3%, with 5% being extremely good. In addition to this funnel chart, Amplitude gives us some other tools to further analyze our funnels. To start, adding users and user segments can help us discover who our ideal users are. So by changing the filter here, we can add additional segments or filter by specific segments. For example, if I wanted to get someone using the platform. So for example, if I wanted to get mobile users and compare that to all users, I simply add a new segment, and then I choose the iOS and Android platforms, and I get a comparison. You can see the percentage of conversion is about the same, even though the number of users is significantly lower than the general population. I can also go to the Pathfinder or journey map and look at the funnel in a different perspective. So the journey map is going to show me how users travel through the entire funnel, not in the specific order that I created, but in general, moving around between different aspects of that funnel. So you can see 14.4% of users go through this specific flow. So I can find out which flow is the most successful one. And you can see Pathfinder is a similar type of view where it goes through and you can add each step of the way and it'll show you where the user goes. This can be very valuable in understanding how your users are actually using these events within your funnel. FullStory is similar, but it handles things a bit differently. If you click on conversions, you can create a new analysis. So you choose which funnel you want to evaluate. So I'll choose my user sign-up funnel. And you choose your time range, and you can also add a segment if you'd like to. We'll do past 30 days. And then when you click on Analyze, it will bring up a chart that you can then review. And again, you can see my conversion rate is insanely high. One of the great things about FullStory is it has this opportunities section where we'll actually find different things that might be problematic from within your funnel. So you can see I'm getting a network error at certain points. So that might be something I can look into. And I've got a performance issue. So I can look and see, why is this first contentful paint, which is essentially just rendering of the website, why is that taking so long? And I can optimize it. And hopefully that can help me to get higher conversions. In the next video, we're going to look into these as well as how we can find those key elements that lead to higher conversions. The magic of conversions comes when you can utilize your analytics to determine what behaviors are driving or preventing engagement. This is next level analytics, and this is what great PMs do. FullStory has a section that we talked about for opportunities, and this can identify possible reasons why users might not be converting. These opportunities usually show issues the site is having that may affect our conversion funnel. So these can be related to performance, insight errors, dead clicks, or even rage clicks. We can then fix bugs, add better error handling, or whatever it takes to get a better experience for our users. I will note that when you get some of the higher end licenses in FullStory, there are also some insights that you can go to from each of these steps that will allow you to sort of manage some different signals and be alerted when they happen. Those little fixes that we talked about in FullStory are just a small part of conversion analysis. Amplitude has a conversion drivers tool, and understanding what events correlate with conversions can help us to boost these events. For our flight purchase funnel, we can click on any step in the funnel and we can go to the conversion drivers. So you can see for this particular one, this is the select flight. You can see I have a weak positive correlation with viewing flight, which makes sense. And the others, not so correlative. So in this example, it doesn't help us a lot. But if I go back and look, say, at the complete flight booking, I can see I have some really strong positives. So 1 is as strong as you can get. So this is about as positive a correlation as you can possibly see. And that's someone who filters search results, which makes sense, right? If you're looking at your flights and you want to make sure to see the right flights that you might purchase, filtering them is obviously going to be a strong correlation. So if you think about that from a perspective of wanting to increase conversions, how can you make it easier for the user to filter? This may correlate into having a higher conversion rate. Additionally, users who receive a price alert often will make a purchase. It makes sense that there would be a strong correlation here, because if someone receives a price alert, it means they probably want to buy that ticket once it hits a certain price. And then again, you can see some others that aren't as correlative. Edit profile, that's an interesting one to think about. That just means someone has committed to the website. They've added information like their home, airport, that can make it more likely for them to make purchases in the future. So how might you encourage people when they sign onto your website to create a profile? You might find that this ends up being a strong correlation towards purchasing more flights. Now, there's also a tab to show events where users dropped off. So this is the opposite of the previous analysis. What events do users do that have a strong correlation with not completing the funnel? We don't have a lot of strong correlations, which is probably good, but it might be worth experimenting. Obviously, users whose sessions end aren't going to make a purchase. That makes sense. It means they left. Viewing an ad, there's a weak positive. So what is that about? Maybe the ads are distracting people, so they're not making their purchases. But you can see by understanding what behaviors correlate in positive and negative ways can in many ways help product managers to find areas of potential improvement that can ultimately optimize conversions and make their applications more effective and profitable. Once we find these areas, the next step is to start experimenting with solutions, which is exactly what we're going to be discussing. In the life of a product manager, uncertainty is something we have to contend with every day. Product analytics is one way to help with this, but how can we find out if something will work that we haven't implemented yet? This is where experiments come into play. An experiment is really just testing to see if something we think is a good idea is actually a good idea, at least statistically speaking. We can find out if changing a form will make more people fill it out, or if one page or another is better to convert users to subscribers. In other words, we can get data on something we aren't sure if we should deploy or not. Most application experiments involve deploying 2 or more options, then testing with real users to see which one works best. We can test on all users, on a straight percentage of all users, or even test it only on specific user segments. The first thing to consider is sample size. One of the biggest mistakes young product managers make is they run an A/B test with 100 users, then determine the quote winner. But this isn't a statistically significant sample size. There are calculators out there and methods, but the simple estimate is you need about 30,000 users per option with 3,000 conversions each. If you have a smaller conversion rate, then you need to up your total users. Then we have to ask ourselves, what is the minimum difference that will make this worth it? We call this the MDE, or minimum detectable effect. This will depend on many factors, including what's worked in the past and what's worth it. For example, if you can get a 1% conversion improvement by adding something that takes months of development time, it may not be worth it. As a general rule, 2 to 5% is a good baseline MDE. If all this is new to you, I recommend reading up on it a bit. This statistic stuff is boring, but it's absolutely critical to understand. Now we can set to work defining our actual test plan. Here's what we need to do. First, we need to align on and clearly define and articulate the problem that we're trying to solve. Second, we need to make a hypothesis that includes what we're going to test, like changing a step in our flow, and our hopeful outcome, like 10% more conversions. It's good to have a hypothesis statement like the one here. User churn in our onboarding funnel is significantly higher than industry average. Product data suggests our funnel may be too confusing. We believe that this can be fixed by consolidating steps 2 and 3 in the funnel. As a result of this change, we expect onboarding churn to decrease by 20%. You can see this is a great hypothesis because it clearly states the problem, why we're doing what we're doing, and what we hope to get out of it. Then we need to pick a metric and a target MDE. What is it that we're measuring exactly that will indicate whether our test is successful? We'll determine the threshold here, the MDE, so 20% decreased churn in the example given. Creating the variant or variance is an important part of the process. Whatever it is you're planning on testing, this is it. A new button, a new screen, a new whatever. Get it ready. The last step will be determining who will see your experiment. You can plan on rolling this out to a percentage of your users or rolling it out for everyone. Keep in mind that only a portion of them will see the variant. You can also roll this out to a particular segment, like subscribers only or users in North America, whatever makes the most sense. Once you've got this all in place, it's time to create the experiment. In the next video, we'll discuss how to set up and run your experiment. Now that you've created a plan for your experiment, it's time to set it up and implement it. There are a variety of tools out there that can help you with this, including Amplitude, LaunchDarkly, and VWO. For our experiment, we're going to use VWO for the simple reason that it doesn't require much configuration, and they have a free trial we can use for smaller traffic sites. I should first explain that in order to use the experiment feature in Amplitude, you're going to need to have the growth or enterprise license. And this is a bit more than the regular base licensing. Both LaunchDarkly and VWO are reasonably priced tools that do basically the same thing, and they support Amplitude integration, so you can use the segments that you've created in Amplitude to control who sees your tests. To use VWO, you're going to need to sign up for a demo account. For the purposes of this test, the web version is sufficient, but if you have a mobile app, make sure to choose a plan that supports mobile as well. Then you're going to need to make sure that you've connected your application. The process will vary depending on the type of app you have, but it should be fairly easy for your devs to integrate by plugging some code in here or there. Once it's configured, you can create a new experiment. Note that VWO Web has a few different types. A/B experiments test versions of a page. Multivariate allows you to test multiple changes in a single page. Split URL allows you to test 2 distinctly different links in different pages to see which performs better. And mobile A/B allows you to do A/B tests in a mobile app. So let's go ahead and create a new A/B test. There's a create button right here. One of the nice things about VWO is that you can actually design the variations yourself, so you don't need to get a designer or developers involved to do all the changes. So put in the page that you want to change. I'm just going to go to our home page. Then you can create variations. So here you can use Visual Editor or Code Editor to make the changes you need. So here's our home page, and it'll walk you through some changes. And don't worry about this. This just means something needs to be configured, and I can work on that later. So you can then highlight whatever you want and change it however you need to. So in this example, I might do a simple edit HTML, and instead of subscribe, I'm going to say sign up now is my call to action. So there's my variation, and then I save and continue. So now I've created my variation. And then I need to choose the metrics. The primary metric I'm going to use is clicks. And then you can set your audience and traffic however you wish to do it. So I can have it come from all traffic. I can have it come from these predefined different ones. Maybe I just want to test it with mobile. And then I can have different segments that I can create right here in VWO, or this could be integrated with your Amplitude. And then once you set it up, I'll just do all traffic. That's fine. And the percentage of visitors that will become part of the campaign. So maybe you don't want to show this to everyone. If you have a lot of traffic, you might want to just do it to a subset. But remember, you want to get as many clicks as you can to make sure you have a statistically significant sample. And then when I'm done, I can save it. And when I've got this all configured, then I can go ahead and start the test. So running experiments is a great way to test changes to see if they're worthwhile before you do the heavy development work. In this video, we went over how to create a test using VWO. Next, we're going to have a look at how we can parse out the results. Once you've started your experiment, you should be able to begin analyzing the results. In this video, we're going to look at experiments conducted in both VWO and Amplitude and see what we've learned from our experiment. Let's start with VWO since that's where we created our experiment in the previous video. Now, since we just started it, we really don't have any data, so let's go ahead and just look at this sample data. In this experiment, we added social proof like reviews and endorsements on the sign-up page to see if we'd get more conversions. Let's see if they're correct. So you can see I have my control, which is the regular website, and my social proof. And then we have these different metrics on the side. So when we created our experiment, we only used one metric. But in this example, they have 5 different metrics that they can track. So you can actually go through these different ones. Now note, whether or not people pay for their subscriptions was the main metric they were tracking. But they also track these other ones. So in my paid metric, you can see that expected revenue per visitor is actually higher by quite a bit. Signups, however, are fewer. There's also slightly fewer visits to the pricing page. The engagement is higher and fewer visits to the sign-up page. So you can see it's very interesting to track these different metrics and see what the difference is. Let's go ahead and just take a look at this visits to sign-up page and look at how we parse out this data. So this is showing us just raw for each version how many of these metrics happened on different days. So, you can see I've got 4 for this one and 6 for this one. So over time, and you can change it to be weekly and you can change the time frame, etc. if you want to. Now, once we get into looking at whether or not this is statistically significant, this is where this probability density comes into play. So when we look at our probability density, note that this overlap here is where the two options converge. The more overlap, the less likely there's a significant difference between the two. So you can see in this example, the average is 2.51 and 4.99, and this is our area of uncertainty here, but it's pretty small. The box plot will actually give you another view of this as well. So where these two converge over the same data points, that's where the uncertainty is. And it also shows you the range, which is nice. So it has the average, and then it has the whole range of what happens. Now, when we look at our paid, which is our primary metric, you can see there's a bit of overlap here, quite a bit of overlap, and that may or may not make sense. So what I like to do to determine significance is I like to use a calculator. So there are a number of calculators online. I find this one to be pretty easy at SurveyMonkey. And you basically just put in your values. So for A, we have 894 total and 7 conversions. So we do 894 and 7. And then the other one is 863 and 18. And then we calculate. So you can see the difference is significant, right? It's enough. Even though we have a small sample, because the variation is so great, we can say that there's a 95% confidence that variant B will perform better than variant A statistically. And you can do, if you wanted to do 99%, you can see it's not quite there. So that's basically how you can do it using VWO. It's a fairly straightforward tool. Amplitude, percent confidence that variant B will perform better than variant A statistically. And you can do, if you wanted to do 99%, you can see it's not quite there. So that's basically how you can do it using VWO. It's a fairly straightforward tool. Amplitude, their experiments, we can have a look in the demo just to get an idea of what they have. So you can see I have some different experiments here. I'm going to go ahead and just have a look at this one. Now, when you set up your experiments, you put in your information, your hypotheses, what you're looking for, the type of experiment you're doing, what metrics you want to track, and what your MDE is. And then there's some different things you can have in terms of how it's determining statistical significance. One of the nice things about Amplitude is you can see it will tell you when it reaches a statistical significant result. So let's go ahead and go into Analyze. So you can see here's the summary. The purchase ticket will increase by at least 15%, which was our MDE, right? And it says making the target performance of the treatment 28.9%. And this one is 32.7%. It's 30% more than our control. So it's saying that we can strongly consider rolling out the treatment. And then you can look down here and see how it performed, what the significance is, what the data was, how many conversions there were, how many people saw it, and calculate from there. And then there's some graphs you can use to determine statistical significance. Here's our MDE here. And so you can see our threshold of statistical significance. So you can see whichever tool we use, running experiments is an absolutely invaluable process for product managers to use. And it's really important to use these analytics so that we can determine whether we can reach our MDE and when something is statistically significant so that we should make the change. Feature flagging is a way of tagging our features such that we can roll them out to a smaller audience before making the feature available for all users. This can be invaluable because we can experiment with new features and iterate on them, or abandon them altogether based on how they're received. This can ensure there's greater success with new features and that we don't waste time building things users won't actually use. Feature flagging is available in a lot of the tools we use for experimentation. LaunchDarkly, VWO, both have them. For this unit, we're going to look at the feature flagging tools in Amplitude, which fortunately, they've actually just added for the free version. It didn't used to be available. You needed a higher license in order to use it. So in order to create one, you can go ahead and go to the Create menu, and you'll see below there's a feature flag option. You're going to give your feature flag a name. So something that makes sense, new web home. And then choose your project. If you don't see a project, it might be that you don't have a deployment. This is something you have to create and set up. It's not particularly complicated. You just will need to do it. And if you look, you can see there's a deployments menu over here, and you can just create a new deployment. Under the advanced menu, you can see there's a key here. You can actually create your own keys if you want to. If you don't know what this means, you probably don't need to, but it has to do with what you're doing in terms of how you're tagging these and what's happening in the code on your website. There's also this evaluation mode. Now, remote means that when it determines what to show each user, it's going to happen on the Amplitude server. That can take a little bit of time. So oftentimes you can do it locally. This means you just need to make sure you have the SDK installed, and the documentation in Amplitude can tell your devs what you need to do to get everything set up so that you can do it and save that processing time. So once you set it up, you can go ahead and click Create. So now I have my basic experiment feature screen here, and now I need to finish setting it up. So I'm going to select a deployment. So I'll choose the main website. I need to create at least one variant. So for the variants, this one is on. That's the variant. It's just determining whether something is on and off. You can add different ones. So basically the feature's on or the feature is off. And what your devs will do is they're going to use that key that you created, and they're going to essentially flag what code should be delivered if it's on and what code should be delivered if it's off. So this will basically show or hide the feature. So once you've got this set up, then you want to determine who you want to roll this feature out to. So you can roll it out to all users, and you can show it to just a particular percentage of them, or you can roll it out to targeted users. So you can use a segment you've already created, or you can add additional segments as well. So maybe you only want to show this to people who have subscribed to your pro version or something like that. It's up to you. Let's go ahead and just do all users for this example, and we'll just roll it out to half of them. So half of the users will see this. And then when you're done, you can save it. And once your developers deploy it, you can activate it. Now, one handy thing here is this testing. Because you're integrating this with code, it's going to be very important to make sure you get it correct. So you can actually add device IDs up here that you want to use to test. And then anyone who has their ID added can test it, and you can make sure it all works before you activate it. And then once it's up and running, you can watch the data come in and determine if this is something you want to roll out or not. So overall, feature flagging is a great way to test out features before rolling them out to your entire user base. It's become a best practice when adding new features. Now that we've looked at all these types of experiments, in the next section, we're going to look at how can you use all the data that you've learned how to use so far to create a business case. Using data and analytics should always spring from asking questions. For example, why aren't more people subscribing? Or which feature should we build next? And so on. Where this can really help with products is if we can present a business case. A business case is an ask for company resources, usually money and time, to upper management. In product management, this can range from getting permission to test a new feature, to doing a product redesign, to building a new product, to implementing new enterprise software like FullStory, or even lowering subscription prices on your product. Keep in mind that depending where you are on the org chart, and how much autonomy and budget they give to product managers, the type of business cases you will be making will vary. If you're an entry-level PM or product owner, you may need to make a case to pitch new features or minor design changes to a group PM or senior PM. As you work your way up, you'll be pitching entirely new products or major shifts in product focus to senior management. If you've ever pitched a startup or if you've ever watched Shark Tank, the process is really no different. We're presenting the problem, the proposed solution, and we're backing it up with data to support it. The first step you're going to need to do is formulate your objectives by asking key questions. What is the business context, the company vision and goals, product department goals and KPIs? Who needs to be involved? What departments might be affected? Are there any special rules that govern these types of pitches and asks? For example, a company may have a rule that new initiatives should have a 2-year return on investment. Who are the key decision makers you're going to need to pitch to? Is this going to be political? Are you going to need to get allies and champions? Who might be against it? These kind of things come up in organizations all the time. What's important to all these people? What are the key dates and deliverables? And is there any way that these could sync with other departments or other initiatives within the organization? Once you've formulated all of your objectives, now you start to collect your data. You're going to get data from anything existing that you have, but you also might need to gather data from new areas. Usually, a business case initiates from some kind of a hunch or an idea, but it does need to be validated. It's important not to draw conclusions until you do so. It's important to remember that you need to stay neutral until the data validates it. As excited as you are about an idea, if you can't show that it's going to have an effect, you're probably not going to get your ask. Think about what data you can find that will support or possibly disprove this hunch that you have. Think about what counter arguments there could be to your business case. Then think about how product data might support that, either quantitative, ideally, or qualitative by having user interviews and things like that. You can do new research if you need to, and remember that there may be other data from other parts of your organization that can help you, from support, marketing, sales, accounting, and other places. Let me give an example of when I've used this before. There was a company I worked with that had a mobile app, and I knew there were some issues with the UI, but the founder loved the current UI. So I put together a new design, and I also put together a questionnaire that asked users to show us how they would do different tasks that they're currently doing in the app. And then I asked them subjectively which they thought was easier to use and which was more aesthetically appealing. My new design ended up winning hands down. So the founder agreed to test a redesign. And when we did, we had a 60% improvement in retention with the new design. No one can argue with data. Once you have a strategy, the next step is to gather the data and then make your case. Once you've put your basic business case together, you need to start gathering your data. This is a critical step as the data you collect will be key in making your case for more money, time, or resources. Understand often product data will give leading indicators like more daily active users, but these can often lead to lagging indicators like more revenue. It's your job to show how data leads and how your case can increase those leading indicators, and hopefully the lagging ones will follow. Let's look at the data inputs we'll need for our business case. First off, who is your target audience? Is this a new audience or an existing segment? Don't just assume all users. If this is about a UX or feature change, learn more about who this might attract or benefit. Be as specific as you can. Next, what is the pain or problem that you're addressing? This is a key factor in the case. You need to show that there's a pain that you can address. And finally, what's the desired outcome? And how does the solution you propose lead to that? Is this an existing audience? Or are you looking to add features or a new product to address a new audience? If a new audience, what do you know about this new audience? Can you find out the total available market or TAM? Do you have a plan to address a subset of this market to start? If this is an existing audience, what data can you get in analytics about this subset? You can do a couple things. You can create a segment in FullStory, analyze usage patterns, and watch a few of the users struggling if you can with the pain you describe. You can create a cohort in Amplitude and analyze usage patterns, funnels, and behaviors as they relate to the problem you're trying to solve. Would marketing, customer support, or another department be able to help you get data to support or quantify your audience? If you have trouble quantifying user data, use qualitative UX research to interview and explore more about this demographic. You can use the research time to discuss the next data input, the problem. What is the problem you need to solve? Is it an annoyance, or is it causing you to lose customers? Or could it lead you to capturing greater market share? These are some key questions to ask. Product analytics can offer lots of data to support this. For UX updates, you can show problems by graphing the bounce rate, behavioral data, and FullStory screen replays to isolate and show the pains. A/B tests can show what UX changes might be able to achieve. For new features or products, you can utilize fake door tests or landing page experiments to gauge and show interest, which presumably highlights the need for the problem to be solved, with the added benefit that this can also show your solution has interest as well. Keep in mind, a general benchmark for a good response is about 10% conversion. Predictive Analytics, which uses AI in Amplitude, has a number of ways that we can get this report and get some data that could be helpful. It might show you how something is trending, presumably with lower growth than anticipated or even loss in some areas. Overall, get creative. Think about how to best show this problem in a real way. Finally, you need to show how you'll achieve the desired outcome using the resources you are requesting. The outcome should manifest in one of three ways: more revenue, lowered costs through efficiencies or bringing outsourced features in-house, things like that, or mitigating risks like staying competitive by implementing AI, for example. Once you've decided which outcome you're aiming for, then look for ways to prove your outcome. Mostly experimentation like A/B testing, fake doors, and landing pages, which we've discussed in earlier videos, can show if users are receptive to this and possibly even give you a rough percentage if you have enough traffic to support it. Other qualitative research can be helpful as well by doing user testing of new interfaces, user interviews, and the like. All in all, finding your supporting data is the biggest challenge in making your business case. But once you have at least some data to support your audience, problem, and path to a desired outcome, you can put together your business case, which is what we'll discuss in the next video. Once you've gathered your data, now you just need to put together your case. Depending on the situation in your ask, it might be a one-pager or an email, or it could be a full-blown presentation. Either way, you're going to need to make your case by presenting the problem, the proposed solution, and the desired outcome. There are 4 basic steps to presenting your business case. Get ready, validate it, pitch it, and win, obviously. How much energy you spend on each will vary based on the size of your ask and what processes are in place to support this. You may just need approval from your manager to take the team in a direction via a singular email. Or it may require multiple pitches, cross-functional buy-in, just to get a pitch meeting with the actual decision makers. Once you've figured out the general effort, make sure you have an opening to pitch this idea. Don't waste your time proposing something that the CEO or your manager doesn't want. I once pitched an idea I was sure the CEO would be interested in, given a conversation we had had one time after work. It turns out his thoughts were changed, or maybe he never thought that, he just thought it in the moment, and he was not in the space for the initiative we proposed, which ended up being a total waste of time on our behalf. Then get your data together, as we discussed in the previous unit, and figure out how to present the info. Will it be an email, a single-page doc, a pitch deck, or a pitch deck and a leave behind? Whatever it is, be as succinct as you can and as visual as possible. Don't make people have to think too much outside of what you present. Validation is an important step that many people skip. Don't be that person. Think about risks, assumptions you're making, and potential drawbacks so you're ready to counter those. When you have some data and a draft of your case, float it around with friendlies within your organization to get their feedback. This can not only help identify and prepare for issues, but can build excitement and buy-in. Then lay out your case. Keep in mind, this is a story, and use your best storytelling skills to deliver it. You are telling the story of how your amazing idea, when brought to reality, is going to help the company. If you don't believe it, no one else will. So if you have doubts, figure out why and validate them with data. Present the problem clearly. The problem to both your customer or user, and if relevant, the problem to your company. Show your proposed solution as best you can with whatever you've got. Diagrams, design comps, descriptions. The key is to make it clear so they can picture it and understand how this is going to solve the problem you presented. Walk them through your desired outcome. How amazing will it be when your solution drops? What will this do to the bottom line or to your company KPIs? This is where your predictive and qualitative data might help. Compare outcomes with and without your solution. Present the work that needs to be done to get this outcome. Be specific what you need and why: time, money, and other resources. Then have a nice, clear ask. The more clear it is, the more they can weigh the return on investment and make their decision. You likely aren't going to get a yay or nay in the presentation meeting, so be sure to discuss next steps in concrete terms. Set a meeting or at least a date for follow-up so this doesn't end up in the murky waters of uncertainty. If you do all this, you should have a good chance of getting what you need, or discovering a better ask and solution in the process. This is a key aspect of being a product manager, and one where data can absolutely help. In the next unit, we're going to learn about AI and the future of data-driven product management. Whenever anyone talks about analytics, they invariably refer to dashboards. Search any stock photo site for analytics, and you get a myriad of photos of people looking at dashboards. The reason is this: dashboards are the point of entry for many people, and it's the first place you see when you log into your analytics. Ideally, the dashboard shows you key information that you need to get an understanding of your status and progress on goals and KPIs. Additionally, creating dashboards for other users can be helpful for them to get the data they need without going through you. This can include senior execs for tracking high-level KPIs and North Star data, as well as revenue info and subscriptions. Marketing department can see data based on segments and referrals. Developers might want to find errors and other technical issues like performance and load time. Finance can find lagging data like subscriptions and retention rates, but also use leading data to forecast revenue. Sales can view usage from specific accounts, popular features, and other key data to support closing deals. The key to designing good dashboards is showing data that is actionable, and we do that by understanding what the users of our dashboard will need, just like we would do for the users of our application. In FullStory, you create dashboards in your spaces. There are a couple ways you can do this. You can go into the dashboard screen, and this will be a listing of all your dashboards, and create a new one from here. Or you can use the Create button, and you'll see it listed at the bottom. Let's go ahead and create one for our developers. This way they can find problems, and then they can actually watch sessions and help them solve the errors. So once you've created your dashboard, you can give it a name, and then you can add whatever segments you want, all these different cards. So for example, I could go in and grab from the library, and I could say number of error clicks and number of dead clicks. That's a good start. You can see there's a whole bunch of them here. Here we can get average load time. That can be helpful. Slow page loads. That's a good start. Now you can see here we have our little dashboards, and I can save it and I can add users to this and go there. I should note that adding dashboards is going to require a higher level licensing of your FullStory in order to use it. Dashboards are Amplitude's jam. You can create dashboards from one of Amplitude's predefined templates. And in fact, if you're using the free version, you'll have to. If you do have a higher license, you can create all the custom dashboards you want, and it's extremely deep. But from here, let's go ahead and look. You can see they have it broken down by industry. So if you have a B2B SaaS, for example, this will give you all the salient KPIs you probably want. And then they have one by use case. Let's go ahead and look at these. So you can see you have one for KPIs, engagement, show you how many page views, how many sessions, and some other key information that they'll probably want to see, which ones are becoming more popular, common paths. You can then configure them by getting rid of them or changing things around if you want to. And then when you're done, you go ahead and save as a dashboard. And we can say marketing team. One of the great things about Amplitude is when you create reports, it's very easy to add those reports to existing dashboards. There's no doubt the lure of dashboards is undeniable. And as a product manager, it'll be important to create dashboards for yourself and for others that can allow you to quickly analyze actionable data. Up next, let's look at how AI is changing the product analytics game. The future of all data is artificial intelligence. AI can find patterns and understand large amounts of data in a way that goes beyond what the human brain can even do. It can create predictive models and help product managers in many novel ways. AI and machine learning have provided intelligent data insights for a while, and generative AI and LLMs are fairly new and just getting integrated into existing and new products. There are a few key areas where AI can help in existing products. It can provide better insights that help us come to the right conclusions about our data. It can make it easier to create charts, reports, and dashboards with little intelligent help tools. And predictive analytics can see where things are trending and possibly test alternatives. Amplitude now has AI-powered predictive analytics built in. You can use this easily in your existing reports. For example, if you look at our book travel funnel, if we click the anomaly and forecast button, it will generate a prediction of the next few days. Clicking add forecast will add more days to our prediction. You can see the prediction by the dotted lines. Since this is dummy data, there's clearly a pattern that it knows to repeat, but in your product, it will probably look different. Additionally, you can use predictions on your user data. In our travel app, we can see how certain cohorts can perform based on past performance. We can even create cohorts based on these predictions to further analyze these users and find out what we can do to help them perform better. The prediction report also shows you some areas in your application that were critical in determining its predictive nature. So this can help you get an understanding of what is driving these future predictions. And with higher ends of licensing, you can actually build your own recommendations that will look at events and determine based on your ideal outcome what you might be able to change to help boost that in the future. I expect to see a lot more tools for analytics using AI in the future. For now, using predictive analytics and Amplitude can help you improve conversions and get ready for the future. In the next unit, we're going to talk purely about the future and what AI might hold in store for us. Without a doubt, in the very near future, AI is going to affect how we manage our products. AI is better at understanding data than we are, and it can process vast amounts of information much more quickly. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. In the previous video, we talked about the ways that AI is helping us now, but I wanted to do some speculation about how it may help us in the future. In this video, I want to dream. I want to think about what could be possible and what it might look like if we take AI technology to its logical conclusion. The advent of LLMs, or large language models, gives AI the ability to have a much greater understanding of data, as well as generate content like we've seen with technologies like OpenAI's ChatGPT, Google Bard, and others. From this, we can expect a few key innovations. Being able to learn about your users and your problem space using real-time content generated in social media blogs, podcasts, and videos. Being able to extend your funnels to events that happen prior to the user visiting your application. being able to draw greater insights and conclusions from our data, being able to generate content or images based on user information. And these are just the tip of the iceberg. What I found most exciting is the generational aspect. As you're probably aware, generative AI LLMs can create text, code, and images from prompts. It's really only a short leap to being able to create actual features in real time for users. Imagine this. A user comes to your application, logs in, and after answering a couple questions, AI generates an entire application around your data that exists solely for them. Or, after navigating around your pre-built application, the AI does a real-time analysis to determine which cohort they belong in, and using predictive analyses determines the outcome they would have in this pre-built application, but then reconfigures it to better enable their success. Take our travel app. Let's say a user comes and performs a search. When the user does this, AI is watching every click they make, and from that, using its massive model that it's trained from all travel apps, it determines that the user is booking a recreational trip and is able to reconfigure the application to support them planning this trip, including generating a suggested itinerary, showing them events and places to eat it assumes they will like based on the cohort they've placed the user in. This, I believe, is the future of application development. The division between product analytics, coding, design, and content creation will all blur, allowing us to create apps that will accommodate our users based on their needs in real time. As product managers, it will be our job to analyze the value proposition of our application and determine the configuration that will be needed to draw the boundaries of how and where the users will be directed. Until then, we will continue to rely on our product analytics and user research to understand our users, their problems, and plan how we can roll out applications that will be successful in the marketplace. We've gone through the strategy and tactics of using product data to drive product management decisions. You now have a solid foundation from which you can only become a better product manager. There are a few great places you can go to learn more about analytics strategy. You can check out the General Data Analytics course here on LinkedIn. The Product Manager website has a lot of great information, and they have this little guide about product analytics that I find very helpful for people getting started. Product Folks has a website that can help you get deeper, and Cornell is offering an online course on analytics and iteration. To learn more about Amplitude and FullStory, I highly recommend visiting the Amplitude blog and their comprehensive help docs, as well as the Amplitude Academy, which has a number of great courses and certifications that can help you understand Amplitude better. For FullStory, they have one resources page that contains links to blogs and all kinds of informational websites that I recommend visiting. And lastly, to learn more about experiments and feature flagging, check out the Experiment Design course here in LinkedIn. The Fountain Institute also offers a course on designing product experiments. And Launch Darkly, one of the early pioneers of feature flags, has a great blog that contains lots of information on using feature flags. I hope you enjoyed this course, and I wish you the best of luck in using data to build amazing products.